to say what he was talking about right now. On the issue of James Comey, will the president invoke executive privilege, or does he want former Director Comey to testify before Congress?
Well, we'll be watching with the rest of the world when Director Comey testifies. The last time he testified under oath, the FBI had a scurry to correct that testimony. He was off by hundreds of thousands in his count, his sworn testimony count of the number of information, the number of emails that Huma Abedin allegedly sent to her husband, Anthony Weiner. He said there were hundreds of thousands. It turns out that was off by hundreds of thousands.
So the president's not going to invoke executive privilege?
The president will make that decision. But look, we also want to refer everybody to what Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein said about James Comey, because Rosenstein, as the DAG, he has direct authority over the FBI director. And he came on the job after being confirmed 94-6 in the U.S. Senate after serving as President Obama's a U.S. attorney in Maryland. And coming on the job, he went and looked at the investigation about the way Mr. Comey handled Hillary Clinton's email investigation, and he concluded that it really hurt the morale and the integrity of the department. Go and read the letter, for everyone can see it. He also talked about how Mr. Comey tried to usurp the authority of the Department of Justice by supplanting Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General at the time, her judgment for his. He didn't like the fact that he held a press conference.
But the president had decided to fire Comey before he got that memo from Rosenstein.
He said that he was thinking about that for a while, and that is true. He saw that testimony a few Wednesdays ago, was very unimpressed. You know how the president feels about Director Comey, and Director Comey, in his goodbye letter to his colleagues at the FBI, George, clearly said that he has long believed a president has the right to fire an FBI director for any reason or for no reason. So that is the president's right. In addition, and independent of that, his Deputy Attorney General, whose job it is to oversee the FBI director, had concluded much the same thing. He said that the morale and the integrity of the department had been compromised, and that one of the only thing that unites people of diverse viewpoints is their dissatisfaction with the way Mr. Comey handled the end of the Clinton email investigation.
At that time, the president also suggested he had tapes of his conversations with Mr. Comey. Does he have those tapes? Is he going to release them?
Well, I won't comment on that. When Director Comey goes to testify, I think that will be a very clarifying moment. I would again repeat that in his most recent sworn testimony, it had to be corrected almost immediately. He was off by hundreds of thousands in his projected calculation. But it's more important to have somebody testify under oath, frankly, than to have his friends and his former colleagues out there speaking to the media not under oath.
We will all be